Kaslin, at long last, welcome to Cube FM. For people who don't know you, although they should know you, who are you, what's your role, and where do you work?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kaslin Fields, and I am a developer relations engineer, developer advocate at Google Cloud, where I actually am now a manager also. I run the team for Cloud Runtimes developer relations at Google Cloud. So that means Google Kubernetes Engine and Cloud Run, which is our serverless offering. I'm also a co-chair of the Special Interest Group for Contributor Experience in Open Source Kubernetes, and I run the communications sub-project there. And I've been involved with the community for many years, and I'm super excited to be on your show, Bart.
Very, very excited to have you with us. So, going back, how did you first get involved in Kubernetes?
Oh, also another thing I didn't mention is that I run the Kubernetes podcast from Google, which co-hosts with Abdel. But that's not how I got started, for sure. We came into that one late. So how did I get started in Kubernetes? So I graduated from college. We're going all the way back there in December of 2013 and started working for a storage company called NetApp. And there I had a lot of really wonderful mentors. And one of them in particular was super excited about containers. His name was Jonathan Rippey, and he's still around doing awesome stuff in the industry. And so he started to teach me about containers because I was new to the industry and wanted to learn about the cool hype thing that he was so excited about. And it just kind of grew from there. I moved on to a team that was doing experimental prototyping with containers. I started getting involved in the local meetup community to meet more folks who were learning about containers. And then Kubernetes started to become a thing, and it won the Container Orchestrator Wars. We could go into the whole history of how Kubernetes became as big as it is today. But as that gained traction, that became one of the meetups that I started going to. And as I started talking to people, more and more people were using Kubernetes to run containers. And so I wanted to get involved with that. And I'd never done anything open source before. So eventually I found my way into open source after a couple of failed attempts trying different SIGs out. I ended up in SIG Contribex. And now here I am today doing all the Kubernetes all the time.
And doing all the Kubernetes all the time, it's a very fast-paced ecosystem. You run a podcast, so that's obviously one way to stay informed. It's one of the things that helps me too. But what are the resources that you go to? What are the things that you follow? Who are the people that you're tracking to make sure that you're up to date?
Oh boy, it is so hard to stay up to date. And one tip for anyone who wants to stay informed and stay on the cutting edge of things, creating your own content is pretty much the only way that I've found to really stay on top of things, because I've got to be learning in order to create new content for other folks to learn. But some of the tools that I use to stay up to date, being involved in the open source community is incredible for this, because you meet so many people who are working on the cutting edge of the project and in different industries, different companies, all working with the same technology. So you get a lot of different perspectives from folks who are really, really amazing. So just being involved in open source at all, you get a lot of that. And then social media, I like to follow a bunch of folks. The classics are like Julia Evans, who's not a container person at all, but more Linux stuff. Always a good place to follow. CNCF stuff is always great to follow because it's more than just Kubernetes. There's so many more open source projects that are kind of related to Kubernetes, and keeping an eye on what's going on with the entire ecosystem, like which areas have a lot of new projects, what types of problems are people trying to solve right now, and which projects are growing. That's a really fantastic way to stay involved. So reading the reports that come out of the CNCF and just kind of keeping an eye on it. Those are some of my favorite ways.
And you mentioned about how you got started originally at NetApp and being close to someone who mentored you and got you on this path towards containers. Who else in the community has helped you level up?
Because there's been so many. So Rippy started things off, of course, when I was at NetApp, teaching me about containers. But in the Kubernetes community, I've had such amazing mentors like Bob Killen and Paris Pittman in SIG Contribex, especially. Paris started the communication subproject that I now lead. And after my failed attempt to get into SIG testing, because it wasn't quite what I was hoping for, I was trying to figure out where I should go within the community next. And Paris showed up and was like, hey, have you considered communications? I'm starting up this new thing. And so Paris was really influential there. Bob helped me learn how to be a SIG chair. I felt like every meeting I was on with Bob, I would come up with an idea, like, here's a problem that I clearly see in the community. Here's a way that we could solve it. And Bob would have all of the background on what's been tried in that space before. And that would always blow my mind. And now I get to be that person for other people. And Chris Short is my co-lead for the communications sub-project. He's been an incredible mentor for my career and for my work in the open source Kubernetes ecosystem, because he's been with the Kubernetes open source project for a really long time, much longer than I have, and has such diverse life experience in his roles that he's had in his career. And so he's been really influential in me figuring out how to lead a group with an open source.
I would also say I wouldn't be sitting here today had I not met Chris, as well as yourself and other folks in early 2021 getting involved in the Contribute Experience Upstream Marketing Group. Also, shout out to Matt Broberg and a whole list of other people that made all that possible. But with this too, is that there's a technical part of Kubernetes, and then we also have the very strong community aspect and the people that we get to meet along the way. So Kubernetes can mean a lot of different things to different people depending on who you ask. What is Kubernetes for you, Kaslin?
The first thing I like to start with is that Kubernetes is a container orchestrator. I feel like I've built my career on explaining to folks the basics of what Kubernetes does and why it has value in our industry. So starting out on the technical side, like, Kubernetes does something that's really valuable for the technology industry. Containers are a way for you to package applications so that they run the same way in a lot of different environments and run very efficiently. And Kubernetes is a tool that allows you to run those containers across many machines. Businesses have many computers, and they need to run a bunch of applications across those computers, and figuring out which computer to run which application on can be a challenge, and Kubernetes can help with that. So that's the technical side of what Kubernetes is. But of course, Kubernetes is open source, and open source is people. So it's this huge community also who are working together to build this incredible tool that has amazing value for the industry. And it's so cool to see how folks, I've already used the phrase from all walks of life, but from all walks of life involved in the community. There are folks who just get involved with it because they want to build their skills. There may be students who are trying to learn about what's useful in the technology industry. And the open source community is a great way to do that. There are folks for whom this is a lot of their job. They use Kubernetes every day, or they build Kubernetes every day as part of their job. And there are also folks who just do it for the community aspect. Like, I've met retirees in the community who are there just to have a way to continue to be involved with the technology industry while being involved with a really fun group of people who you meet up with regularly and you work together toward the same goals.
And you mentioned the aspect of different walks of life, different skill sets, and going back to your shout out to Paris as well about giving outlets for contributor experience that focus on communication. You've become a visible community builder and educator in Kubernetes. But what first drew you to that particular path? I know you mentioned some of the trial and error around the SIGs, but this specific area, what was so attractive about it?
Yeah. So I mentioned I started out with containers, and I moved on to a team very quickly after starting to learn about containers, which was doing prototyping, figuring out what are containers good for? What could we use them for in our business while I was still at NetApp? And started to get involved with the community there. And I just leaned more and more into public speaking. It's one of those things that it kind of comes naturally to me. I did a lot of that in school, I suppose. And so I saw these communities that are trying to learn together about this technology that I want to learn about. And I was like, I want to help these people. I want to be involved with these people. And so I started looking for ways to help run meetups or to contribute to running meetups, because running events is really hard. And I started looking at what are the common questions that folks are asking? How do I help more folks learn about this technology who want to and not fall off of it? Because it's so hard in the technology industry. There are so many new things that you could be learning. What's going to actually stick is going to be the stuff that resonates with you, where you can make progress one step at a time. So I wanted to help folks find those steps to level themselves up, that could actually keep them on that path rather than falling off of it. So that's kind of how I dove more and more into contributor experience and the community aspects of this technology.
And with that in mind too, keeping the balance between practitioner experience, as you mentioned, now with your role as a manager and the things you're looking at, both in terms of Google Cloud and also on the serverless side. So we have a very, very strong technical element, but then also community education. How do you balance those two?
Ooh, it's a real challenge. Part of it is driven by what does my org and what does the business need. So at Google, we have a system of OKRs. So we have goals that our teams have to meet that are measurable. So wherever I can, I try to find the balance in those. What do I need to deliver in terms of metrics, and how can I use opportunities within the community or use needing to get that metric as an opportunity to dive into the technical side of things? Also, when the product is coming up with a new feature or something like that, that's usually a great opportunity to dive in and try out that feature so that I can tell people about it. Having to stay on the cutting edge means that you have to be continuously learning, continuously trying out the new stuff. So right now, our team has this goal for upskilling, because this is the era of AI, and we all have to learn what's going on with that and how it's disrupting everything. So I'm thankful that my team has really strong goals on upskilling, which I use to kind of take advantage of this moment to get more hands-on with things. I just published an application that I built, a AI chatbot that fully run on GKE, where I got to build like the CI/CD pipeline and Terraform and kind of the end-to-end thing of creating a Kubernetes cluster and running an application on it, which takes a lot of effort and thought to kind of put that whole thing together. But I used this opportunity of upskilling in AI to try this stuff out. So you find the opportunities to stay ahead and help other folks level up.
And with that in mind, in terms of leveling up, a big thing that we have to think about here is these open source technologies. The goal is for people to adopt them. In order for adoption to happen, there needs to be smooth onboarding, understanding that this is, answering questions that you have or responding to a problem that may have arisen in your organization. What impact do you think SIGs like contributor experience and community storytelling have on adoption?
So many different aspects of adoption. The number one aspect of adoption that the contributor experience group focuses on is, of course, open source contribution. How do you get in as a contributor in open source and not fall off of it? Because that by itself is really difficult. There's this quote that I pull out constantly from the book Working in Public by Nadia Egbal, where she says that people don't not contribute because of a lack of technical skill. It's because they're afraid of committing a social faux pas. So I think the most important thing with onboarding, especially for a community, is about making the community welcoming, making it clear, like, you're not going to make a mistake here that's going to ruin your life forever. You're going to learn here, and we're going to have fun with this thing together. And I think that carries over to the technology side as well. If you're trying to learn a new technology, what you don't want to do is make a mistake that's so bad that you can't recover from it. So it's all about making sure that the failure paths are recoverable and that you can figure out, you have the tools that you need to debug things when they go wrong, to build the confidence that you're going to be able to do the things that you need to do with that technology or with that community.
I really like that. And I have to say, going back to 2021, my experience of joining the contributor experience upstream marketing group, is that in every single meeting when new people arrive, everybody is around of letting them know that they're welcome here, that if they just want to attend a meeting just to listen, there's no need to feel that they have to rush into participation, because that can burn folks out or increase imposter syndrome. So I really like that. As much as there is this technical part, there's the social fear, in terms of what you quoted from that book. So that's very, very useful to keep in mind. And that's the thing. There are a lot of people out there that have different skill sets. And that was my case too, coming to contributor experience was, well, I haven't contributed code to Kubernetes. I haven't, got involved really in a technical way. So is there value that I can provide? And the answer is very much yes, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you today. But what advice do you give to folks out there who want to engage but maybe don't want to write code or simply don't know how to do it at the level they think is necessary?
Bart, your work today is still an inspiration for the folks in the community, in the communications team. We have one person who's kind of following in your footsteps right now, reviving the video work that you did on the team years and years ago. So there are all sorts of ways that you can contribute. And when you were mentioning like new folks joining the call and how we welcome them to the community and to the group, it's super easy when they just want to hang out and listen and try to figure out what's going on. The more challenging bit is when they're really excited to get hands-on with something. And I've got to find something to get them hands-on with. Otherwise, they're going to fall off. So we try to make a variety of different projects that are super easy for folks to get started with. One thing we started last year-ish is new contributor orientation, because we have so many folks who join community meetings, not just in the communications team or in SIG Contribex, but all across the community, who are there because they want to get hands-on. They want to grow their skills. They want to do something meaningful in the community. But it's difficult to wrap your head around how large the Kubernetes community is and how it works. So we run these new contributor orientation meetings to help orient folks in the community. Like, here is what the community is, and here is what your part is within it, and how you can grow. Just giving folks that information up front, because it's really hard to get that from just joining a random SIG meeting, because folks will usually be doing whatever work they do for the open source project, and you're kind of coming in the middle, and so it all goes over your head and you kind of fall off that way. But so we started the new contributor orientation initiative, and that is also meant to be something that's super easy for folks to get started with. Like, attend a couple of those meetings, start to get a feel for what the information is that we're conveying, and then if you want to give one of those, just let us know. We need folks to give that content and help others get involved. And you don't have to be super deep in the community to do that, because the way we designed it is anyone from the community can join in. Folks who have been involved with the community for a long time could be there to help you answer questions, but you could give the core content pretty quickly once you kind of learn the basics of how the community works. So that's one thing. We also have social media. I am technically the social media lead in the communications team, and I try to run that as something that's super easy for folks to contribute to. Whenever a KubeCon rolls around, we have a spreadsheet of like, here's the schedule for KubeCon. Here are the different things that we want to make sure the community knows about that are going on. Write a tiny short form social media posts about that thing. Go look at the schedule, read the description, and write something, and you'll learn something at the same time. The communications team also has our blogging project, which is kind of on hold at the moment because we desperately need blog reviewers. If you want to help us review blogs, please join the community. We really, really need your help. Because we can't really run our project right now in the communications team, where we would normally have new folks interview the leads of a special interest group within the project to learn what that special interest group does. It's a great way for folks to learn about the community and have a meaningful impact at the same time by helping others learn what they've learned. But we don't have folks to review the blogs right now, so we can't do as many of them as we want to do. So another opportunity is talk to SIG docs about the skills that you need to review blogs, which is also super straightforward, I think, for if you've done any kind of proofreading in school, then you have a lot of those skills already. So we've got blogs, we've got videos, we've got social media, we've got helping other folks learn about how the community works. These are all non-code ways that folks can get involved, but a lot of folks really want to get involved with code. And one thing we say in new contributor orientation is to not get stuck in the good first issue trap. So if you're out there listening and you're like, oh, I really want to get involved in the open source Kubernetes community and write code, let me give you just one warning. A lot of folks think I'll pick up a good first issue and just write some code and I will be contributing code to the community. But there's a whole process involved. You have to work through GitHub. If you're not familiar with source control, that can really trip people up. You're also working within a community. So even though it's something that's probably pretty approachable for a new person since it's labeled good first issue, it's still going into a code base that already exists with a team of folks already maintaining it. So there may be conversations that need to happen about how that integration happens with the existing code base and stuff. So you may have more community involvement than you might think getting started with code. So there's lots of opportunities to get started with code as well. In the communications team, we actually run the developer website, the kates.dev, the contributor website. So we have technical folks who work on the infrastructure of that website, and there's all sorts of opportunities around. But do be careful and don't get stuck in the good first issue trap. Be aware that it's part of a community.
I think it's a really good point, and that's sometimes it's a difficult thing to balance out. Someone's desire and energy and excitement about getting involved, but then be like, okay, let's take that and let's try to channel that in a way that's going to be sustainable, that's not going to create some kind of friction or burnout, and really, helping people start slowly so that they can have a more successful experience as contributors. I think that's it's a very noble project, and a lot of deep breaths and patience go into that. And I hope folks out there really appreciate all that, because this stuff doesn't just come out of nowhere. This is being built and continuously maintained by lots of people out there in their free time. And obviously we imagine a future where there are lots of new blog reviewers. We definitely hope for that. But looking ahead, how do you think that roles like educator and advocate will evolve in the Kubernetes world?
Sometimes it's difficult to talk about AI all the time, but I think that plays a really important role in how we think about education and advocacy in the technology world going forward. AI, LLMs they started out as chatbots. It's a way for you to engage with the machine and the information that it's been trained on in natural language. And I think that's a really important tool for education, especially in the technology space. There's a tool that some Google engineers came up with, but it's open source, called kubectl AI. And so that's a command line tool that you can install that knows kubectl really well. And I know when I'm working with kubectl and I'm trying to work toward getting the certified Kubernetes administrator certification or things like that, I often forget kubectl commands. And it's really nice to have this kubectl AI tool where I can be like, I know there's a command in kubectl to do this thing. How should I do that? And it can just kind of explain it to me and run it right there in the console. So I think that's a really powerful learning tool of, that there's some way to do this, and kind of figuring it out right there on the spot and trying things out and iterating. I think one of the best ways to learn is kind of pair programming, working with someone else who knows the space, or even better, who doesn't. And you bounce ideas off of each other about, what do we need to try next to try to accomplish our goal with this technology? Where do we need to look to learn the things that we need to learn? And AI kind of makes that more accessible to folks in a way, where you're kind of doing that form of iteration with the machine. So I think that's an important tool going forward for education. And Kubernetes is so big now. We always say in events, especially last year with the 10-year anniversary of Kubernetes, we talked a lot about how no one can understand the whole of Kubernetes with how large it is now. And focus going forward has to be keeping it both extensible, flexible for whatever changes may come in the future, but also not overwhelming it with functionality and tech debt that people can't understand. So the future of Kubernetes is about keeping it focused on the things that it does really well, that are real problems in the tech industry, without putting so much detail in it that it's not actually useful for anything. And so advocacy is going to be about maintaining the simplistic view. Like each person you're talking with in an audience, say you're talking to an audience of 100 people, each one of those people has some problem that they want to solve. Maybe Kubernetes is the answer for them, maybe it's not. But if they can't see any solution in the mess of things that it can do, then they're not going to move forward with it. So that's what advocacy is going to be about going forward, is making sure that the problems that Kubernetes solves continue to be clear and accessible to folks.
And with that in mind of what's next for Kubernetes, what's next for you, Kaslin? What can we expect? What are you excited about?
Well, I've got a meeting coming up soon, but
real quick.
Let's see. KubeCon North America is coming up here in Atlanta in November. So I expect to be at that. In the communications team in open source, if you want to join us, we're still running meetings every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And I'm trying to do more to help folks get familiar with the social media side of that project. So if you want to learn about social media in the Kubernetes project and how to keep contributors informed about the awesome stuff that's going on in the contributor community, please join us in open source Kubernetes. And then on the Google side, we've got Google Cloud Next coming up next year in April, should be. I haven't checked the date on that in a month or two. Probably less than that. But anyway, that'll be a really big conference for my team where we prepare a lot of content about what's going on the Google side of all of these technologies. And so if you happen to come to Google Cloud Next or KubeCon North America, or if you happen to hop into the open source community, I hope I'll see you there.
Sounds good. And if people want to get in touch with you, Kaslin, what's the best way to do that?
Yes. Social media platforms. I may not look like I'm not active on right now, but I am actually super active on. I've been getting involved in LinkedIn more. So reach out to me on any of my social media platforms, Blue Sky, X, LinkedIn, and in the Kubernetes Slack. Kubernetes Slack is probably the best way because I'm always in there trying to help folks out with questions in the community. So feel free to direct message me on Kubernetes Slack.